Hello, fifth grade readers. Welcome to another episode of Reader's Workshop. Today we're going to start with something a little bit different. We're not going to start with our typical read aloud. We will end today's session with a chapter from The Thief of Always, but today we're going to start with a different story. So let me share my screen with you and we'll dive right in. This is called The Story of Jumping Mouse. And it is actually based on a First Nation legend, and it's retold and illustrated here by John Steptoe. So, the story of Jumping Mouse. Once there was a young mouse who lived in the brush near a great river. During the day, he and the other mice hunted for food. At night, they gathered to hear the old ones tell stories. The young mouse liked to hear about the desert beyond the river, and he got shivers from the stories about the dangerous shadows that lived in the sky. But his favorite was the tale of the far-off land. The far-off land sounded so wonderful, the young mouse began to dream about it. He knew he would never be content until he had been there. The old ones warned that the journey would be long and perilous, but the young mouse would not be swayed. He set off one morning before the sun had risen. It was evening before he reached the edge of the brush. Before him was the river, on the other side was the desert. The young mouse peered into the deep water. "How will I ever get across?" he said in dismay. "Don't you know how to swim?" called a gravelly voice. The young mouse looked around and saw a small green frog. "Hello," he said. "What is swim?" "This is swimming," said the frog, and she jumped into the river. "Oh," said the young mouse, "I don't think I can do that." "Why do you need to cross the river?" asked the frog, hopping back onto the bank. "I want to go to the far-off land," said the young mouse. "It sounds too beautiful to live a lifetime and not to see it." "In that case, you need my help. I'm Magic Frog. Who are you?" "I'm a mouse," said the young mouse. Magic Frog laughed. "That's not a name. I'll give you a name that will help you on your journey. I name you Jumping Mouse." As soon as Magic Frog had said this, the young mouse felt a strange tingling in his hind legs. He hopped a small hop and, to his surprise, jumped twice as high as he'd ever jumped before. "Thank you," he said, admiring his powerful new legs. "You're welcome," said Magic Frog. "Now step onto this leaf and we'll cross the river together." When they were safely on the other side, Magic Frog said, "You will encounter hardships on your way, but don't despair. You will reach the far-off land if you keep hope alive within you." Jumping Mouse set off at once, hopping quickly from bush to bush. The shadows circled above, but he avoided being seen. He ate berries when he could find them and slept only when he was exhausted. Days passed. Though he was able to travel quickly, he began to wonder if he'd ever reach the other side of the desert. He then came upon a stream that coursed through the dry land. Under a large berry bush, he met a fat old mouse. "What strange hind legs you have," said the fat mouse. "They were a gift from Magic Frog when she named me," said Jumping Mouse proudly. "Hm, hm," snorted the fat mouse. "What good are they?" "They've helped me come this far across the desert, and with luck they'll carry me to the far-off land," said Jumping Mouse. "But now I'm very tired. May I rest here a while?" "Indeed you may," said the fat mouse. "In fact, you can stay forever." "Thank you, but I'll stay only until I'm rested. I've seen the far-off land in my dreams, and I must be on my way as soon as I'm able." "Dreams," said the fat mouse scornfully. "I used to have such dreams, but all I ever found was desert. Why go jumping about the desert when everything anyone needs is right here?" Jumping Mouse tried to explain that it wasn't a question of need, but something he felt he had to do. But the fat mouse only snorted again. Finally, Jumping Mouse dug a hole and curled up for the night. The next day the fat mouse warned him to stay on this side of the stream. "A snake lives on the other side," he said, "but don't worry, he's afraid of water, so he'll never cross the stream." Life was easy beneath the berry bush, and Jumping Mouse was soon rested and strong. He and the fat mouse ate and slept, and then slept and ate. Then one morning, when he went to the stream for a drink, he caught sight of his reflection. He was almost as fat as the fat old mouse. "It's time for me to go on," thought Jumping Mouse. "I didn't come all this way to settle down under a berry bush." Just then he noticed that a branch had gotten caught in the narrow part of the stream. It spanned the water like a bridge. Now the snake could cross. Jumping Mouse hurried back to warn the fat old mouse, but the mouse hole was empty, and there was a strange smell in the air. Snake! Jumping Mouse was too late. "Poor old friend," he thought as he hurried away. "He lost hope of finding his dream, and now his life is over." Jumping Mouse traveled through the night, and the next morning he saw that he had reached a grassy plain. Exhausted, he hopped toward a large boulder where he could rest in safety. But as soon as he got closer, he realized the boulder was an enormous, shaggy bison lying in the grass. Every once in a while, it groaned. Jumping Mouse shivered at this terrible sound. "Hello, Great One," he said bravely. "I'm Jumping Mouse, and I'm traveling to the far-off land. Why do you lie here as if you were dying?" "Because I am dying," said the bison. "I drank from a poisoned stream, and it blinded me. I can't see to find tender grass to eat or sweet water to drink. I'll surely die." Jumping Mouse was so sad to see such a wondrous beast so helpless. "When I began my journey," he said, "Magic Frog gave me a name and strong legs to carry me to the far-off land. My magic is not as powerful as hers, but I'll do what I can to help you. I name you Eyes of a Mouse." As soon as he had spoken, Jumping Mouse heard the bison snort with joy. He heard, but he could no longer see, for he had given the bison his own sight. "Thank you," said Eyes of a Mouse. "You are small, but you have done a great thing. If you will hop along beneath me, the shadows of the sky won't see you, and I will guide you to the mountains." Jumping Mouse did as he was told. He hopped to the rhythm of the bison's hooves, and in this way he reached the foot of the mountains. "I am an animal of the plains, so I must stop here," said Eyes of a Mouse. "How will you cross the mountains when you can't see?" "There will be a way," said Jumping Mouse. "Hope is alive within me." He said goodbye to his friend, then he dug a hole and went to sleep. The next morning Jumping Mouse woke to cool breezes that blew down from the mountain peaks. Cautiously he set out in the direction of that coolness. He had not gone far when he felt fur beneath his paws. He jumped back in alarm and sniffed the air. "Wolf!" He froze in terror, but when nothing happened, he gathered up his courage and said, "Excuse me, I'm Jumping Mouse, and I'm traveling to the far-off land. Can you tell me the way?" "I would if I could," said the wolf, "but a wolf finds his way with his nose, and mine will no longer smell for me." "What happened?" asked Jumping Mouse. "I was once a proud and lazy creature," replied the wolf. "I misused the gift of smell, and so I lost it. I have not learned to be proud, but without my nose, I have learned not to be proud, but without my nose to tell me where I am and where I am going, I cannot survive. I am lying here waiting for the end." Jumping Mouse was saddened by the wolf's story. He told him about Magic Frog and Eyes of a Mouse. "I have a little magic left," he said. "I'll be happy to help you. I name you Nose of a Mouse." The wolf howled for joy. Jumping Mouse could hear him sniffing the air, taking in the mountain fragrances, but Jumping Mouse could no longer smell the pine-scented breezes. He no longer had the use of his nose or his eyes. "You are but a small creature," said Nose of a Mouse, "but you have given me a great gift. You must let me thank you. Come, hop along beneath where the shadows of the sky won't see you. I will guide you through the mountains. to the far-off land. So Jumping Mouse hopped to the rhythm of the wolf's patting paws, and in this way he reached the far-off land. "I am an animal of the mountain, so I must stop here," said Nose of a Mouse. "How will you manage if you can no longer see or smell?" "There will be a way," said Jumping Mouse. He then said goodbye to his friend and dug a hole and went to sleep. The next morning, Jumping Mouse woke up and crawled from his hole. "I am here," he said. "I feel the earth beneath my paws. I hear the wind rustling leaves on the trees. The sun warms my bones. All is not lost, but I will never be as I was. How will I ever manage?" And then Jumping Mouse began to cry. "Jumping Mouse," he heard a gravelly voice say. "Magic Frog, is that you?" Jumping Mouse asked, swallowing his tears. "Yes," said Magic Frog. "Don't cry, Jumping Mouse. Your unselfish spirit has brought you great hardship, but it's that same spirit of hope and compassion that has brought you to the far-off land. You have nothing to fear, Jumping Mouse. Jump high, Jumping Mouse," commanded Magic Frog. Jumping Mouse did as he was told and jumped as high as he could. And then he felt the air lifting him higher still into the sky. He stretched out his paws in the sun and felt strangely powerful. To his joy, he began to see the wondrous beauty of the world above and below, and to smell the scent of the earth and the sky and all living things. "Jumping Mouse," he heard Magic Frog call, "I give you a new name. You are now called Eagle, and you will live in the far-off land forever." And that's the story of Jumping Mouse. Okay, so readers, here's the thing. I want you to think about the fantasy novels that you're reading and any fantasy movies that you may have seen. Maybe The Hobbit or the Narnia, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. Or maybe you've seen a classic like The Dark Crystal, which is one of my favorite fantasy films. Um, think about how these stories go, okay? And I want you to think about any patterns or familiarities or similarities between these stories, okay? And the obstacles, especially, that the characters may face. Does the lead character, the protagonist, always accomplish what they want right away? Or, do they have these obstacles that stop them? Think about, do they stay home or do they leave their home? Think about some of these stories that you've read. And what I want you to do is I want you to now pause the video, and I want you to, your teachers will call on you if you raise your hand. I want you to think about the fantasy stories, okay? And I want you to notice patterns in some of the things that you hear. So stories that you've read in the past or stories that you're even reading now, okay? Are there a series of dangers? Are they traveling? Or are they looking for or searching for or trying to deliver some kind of magic object? Okay, so think of those journeys, okay, those quests that these characters are on, and take a few moments right now, pause the video, and discuss these, okay? So, I wasn't able there to hear your discussions and what you talked about, but I'm guessing there were some patterns in the stories that you shared. Maybe the characters left their homes and they went on a journey. I bet you talked about lots of problems the characters faced as they were on this journey. And you can probably even see that in the story of Jumping Mouse. What you're really talking about when you're talking about these similarities in these stories is the structure. Okay, the author's craft is used to create a structure, and most fantasy stories follow what's called a quest structure. Okay, and the quest structure is that the hero is given some sort of quest, and they have to go on this journey, and they have to encounter these different things that happen. I think about when I said the dark crystal. Jen and Kira are the two gelflings that are in that story, and Jen has this shard, this piece of glass, and that piece of glass is going to heal the dark crystal. And if he replaces it into the crystal, it'll hopefully solve the problems of their land. Um, think about Elizabeth in the Paper Bag Princess. She goes on a journey, after the dragon. You're going to see that Harvey in The Thief of Always is going to go on a journey, okay? Today, I want you to think about this quest structure, okay? Because experienced readers, sophisticated readers of fantasy will always investigate that quest, that external quest that the character is going on. Okay, but the thing is, they also go on an internal quest. They have a quest that's external, and they have a quest or a journey that's inside of them. Okay, and I'm going to show you this. Okay, so we're thinking about external and internal quests. For an external quest, readers think about these things: the big problem or the goal. And then they think about the series of smaller obstacles that the characters need to, overcome to reach that goal. That's the external quest. Okay. And if you want to jot some of this down in your notebook, okay, I'll share this with you so that you'll have this image. For internal quests, readers think about these things. What's inside the character that's getting in the way? What are the internal flaws they have to fix or they have to get around? And what conflicts do they have to overcome? Okay, so I'm going to show you a way to think about this. Okay, and this is what I did. I thought about the story of Jumping Mouse. Okay, and in Jumping Mouse, okay, the character of Jumping Mouse goes on a external quest and an internal quest. Okay, and the external quest I've kind of outlined at the top of this diagram. So, and then what I did is at the bottom of this diagram, I put Jumping Mouse's internal quest, and I kind of connected them using color. So, Jumping Mouse's external quest to reach the far off land. Okay, when the story starts, the red dot, he lives in the brush near a river. Okay, at the bottom, the internal quest is that he lives with fear of the unknown, and it talks about that when he listens to the old one's stories. But then Jumping Mouse sets off one morning. That's the orange dot at the top, the start of his journey. He's dreaming of the far off land. That's the internal quest. Okay, as he starts on this journey, he reaches the river and he has to cross the river, and that's the green dot. And as he reaches the river, he's filled with a lot of dismay and a lot of self-doubt because he doesn't think he can do this. Okay, and it's Magic Frog that kind of helps him overcome that. At the blue dot, he has to cross the desert. Okay, but now he's feeling more proud and more confident with these new magic legs, and he's filled with a lot of hope. When he reaches the purple dot, he has to cross both the plains and he has to cross the mountains. Okay, and what happens during these scenes is that he has empathy for others, and he shows kindness and he shows self sacrifice. He gives the bison his eyes, he gives the wolf his sense of smell. Okay, so you can see as the external journey is going on, this internal journey is also happening. There's an internal quest. Finally, he reaches the far off land. He's filled with hope. He's filled with compassion. He's filled with unselfishness, and he's finally rewarded. And the reward is not just reaching the far off land, but also being converted or magically transformed into eagle. Okay? What I want you to do probably after this video and after end this lesson is I want you all to create a similar timeline for your character. Now, it can look like this one, or it can look like something a little different. So here's another way that you can do this. What you can do is create a chart like, give me a second here. A chart like this one. So this is a fifth grader's chart for Harry Potter, and they are comparing Hermione's external quest and internal quest. So if you look at this, you'll see, Hermione's external quest, afraid of getting a bad grade, finding friends that actually like her. She becomes Harry and Ron's friend. She wants to know who Nicholas Flamel is and what his purpose is. And then the internal quest that Hermione is going through, I think she likes Harry. She's alone, but tries not to show it. I think she wants to get good grades, but just doesn't want to be the smartest of all. And she always wants Harry to be safe. Okay, so there's two different versions of kind of outlining the internal and external quests that your characters face. You saw the timeline that I did, like this, and you can see this chart that this fifth grader created that looks like this. So you can do either style that you want, or you can even come up with perhaps one of your own, and that's totally fine. So whatever works for you in designing this, you can do that the way you want to do it. Okay, we are going to look at we're going to look one more time at let's look at our, not the story of Jumping Mouse. Let's look at this. This is what sophisticated readers of fantasy do, remember? And we have started looking at researching the setting, asking about power, learning alongside the main character, keeping track of the multiple problems, suspending judgment about characters. And now we're looking at reading metaphorically, which is we're looking for the symbolism in our stories. And we talked about the dragons that characters face. We talked about looking at life lessons that are learned and comparing them to our own lives. Now we're looking at considering internal as well as external quest structures. So what's going on outside in this journey and what's going on inside the character. So when you finish this lesson today, I want you to take some time to think about your characters and create some sort of chart that will show that to your classmates and the teammates that are in your book club. Okay, so I gave you a couple of different versions of that, and how you choose to do that is up to you, but you're going to probably do that after this video ends. Let's wrap it up today with a chapter from The Thief of Always by Clive Barker. We are on chapter 11, and that chapter is called Turnabout, and this is the image from that chapter. Chapter 11. Neither Wendell nor Lulu was around the following day. Mrs. Griffin said that she'd seen them both before breakfast, and then they disappeared, so Harvey was left to his own devices. He tried not to think about what had happened the night before, but he couldn't help himself. Snatches of conversations kept coming back, and he puzzled over them all day long. What had Jive meant, for instance, when he told Harvey that turning him into a vampire was not so much a game as an education? What kind of lesson had he learned by jumping off a roof and scaring Wendell? And all that stuff about soul stealers and how they had to be served, what had that meant? Was it Mr. Hood that Jive had been speaking of? That great power they all had to serve? If Hood was somewhere in the house, why hadn't anyone, Lulu, Wendell, or himself, encountered him? Harvey had quizzed his friends about Hood, but they had said the same story for them and had the same story from them both. They heard no footfalls, no whispers, no laughter. If Mr. Hood was indeed here, where was he hiding and why? So many questions, so few answers. And then, as if these mysteries weren't enough, Another came along to vex him. In the late afternoon, lounging in the shade of the treehouse, he'd heard a yell of frustration and peered through the leaves to see Wendell racing across the lawn. He was dressed in a windbreaker and boots, even though it was swelteringly hot, and he was stamping around like a madman. Harvey shouted to him, but his call went either unheard or ignored. So he climbed down and pursued Wendell around the side of the house. He found him in the orchard, red-faced and sweaty. "What's going on?" he said. "I can't get out," Wendell said, grinding a half-rotten apple under his foot. "I went to leave, Harvey. I want to leave, but there's no way out." "Of course there is. I've been trying for hours and hours, and I tell you, the mist keeps sending me back the way I came." "Hey, calm down." "I want to go home, Harvey," Wendell said, close to tears now. "Last night was too much for me. That thing came after my blood. I know you don't believe me." "I do," said Harvey. "Honest, I do." "You do?" "For sure." "Well, then maybe you should leave too, 'cause if I go, it'll come after you." "I don't think so," said Harvey. "I've been kidding myself about this place," Wendell said. "It's dangerous." "Oh yeah, I know it seems like everything's perfect, but—" Harvey interrupted him. "Maybe you should keep your voice down," he said. "We should talk about this quietly, in private." "Like where?" said Wendell, wide-eyed. "The whole place is watching us and listening to us. Don't you feel it?" "Why would it do that?" "I don't know," Wendell snapped. "But last night I thought if I don't leave, I'm going to die here. I'll just disappear one night or go crazy like Lulu." He dropped his voice to a whisper. "We're not the first, you know. What about all the clothes upstairs, all the coats and shoes and hats? They belonged to kids like us." Harvey shuddered. Had he played trick or treat in a murdered boy's shoes? "I want to get out of here," Wendell said, tears running down his face. "But there's no way out." "Well, if there's a way in, there must be a way out," Harvey reasoned. "We'll go to the wall." And with that, he marched off, Wendell in tow, around to the front of the house and down the gentle slope of the lawn. The mist wall looked perfectly harmless as they approached it. "Be careful," Wendell warned. "It's got some tricks up its sleeve." Harvey slowed his step, expecting the wall to twitch or even reach for him, but it did nothing. Bolder now, he strode into the mist, fully expecting to emerge on the other side, but by some trick or other, he was turned around without even being aware of it and delivered out of the wall with the house right in front of him. "What happened?" he said to himself, puzzled. He stepped back into the mist. The same thing occurred. If he went in and out he came again, facing the opposite direction. He tried again and again and again, but the same trick worked upon him every time, until Harvey was as frustrated as Wendell had been a half hour before. "Now do you believe me?" Wendell said. "Yup." "So what do we do?" "Well, we don't yell about it," Harvey whispered. "We just get on with this day. Pretend we've given up on leaving. I'm going to do a little looking around." He began his investigations as soon as they got back into the house by going in search of Lulu. Her bedroom door was closed. He knocked and then called her. There was no reply, so he tried the handle. The door was unlocked. "Lulu?" he called. "It's Harvey." She wasn't there, but he was relieved to see that her bed had been slept in and that she'd apparently been playing with her pets recently. The doors to the doll's house was open, and the lizards were everywhere underfoot. There was one strangeness, however. The sound of running water led him through to the bathroom, where he found the bath full, almost to brimming, and Lulu's clothes scattered in the puddles on the tile. "Have you seen Lulu?" he asked Mrs. Griffin when he got downstairs. "Not in the last few hours," she replied, "but she's been keeping to herself." Mrs. Griffin looked hard at Harvey. "I wouldn't pay too much mind if I were you, child. Mr. Hood doesn't like inquisitive guests." "I was wondering where she'd gotten to," Harvey said. Mrs. Griffin frowned, her tongue working against her pale cheek as though she wanted to speak, but didn't dare. "Anyway," Harvey went on, deliberately goading Mrs. Griffin, "I don't believe Mr. Hood exists." "Now you be careful," she said, her voice and her frown deepening. "You don't want to talk about Mr. Hood that way." "Well, I've been here days and days," Harvey said, realizing as he spoke that he'd lost count of his time in the house, "and I haven't seen him once. Where is he?" Now Mrs. Griffin came at Harvey with her hands raised, and for a moment he thought she was going to strike him, but instead she took hold of his shoulders and shook him. "Please, child," she said, "be content with what you know. You're here to enjoy yourself for a little time, and child, it's such a little time. It flies by. Oh Lord, how it flies." "It's just a few weeks," Harvey said. "I'm not going to stay here forever." Now it was he who stared at her. "Or am I?" he said. "Stop," she told him. "You think I am here forever, don't you?" he said, shaking off her grip. "What is this place, Mrs. Griffin? Is this some kind of prison?" She shook her head. "Don't tell me lies," he said. It's stupid. We're locked up in here, aren't we?" Now, though she was shaking with fear from head to foot, she dared to make a tiny nod of her head. "All of us?" he asked. Again she nodded. "You too?" "Yes," she whispered. "Me too. And there's no way out. Believe me, if you try to escape again, Karna will come after you." "Karna?" he said, remembering the name from the conversation between Jive and Mar. "He's up there," Mrs. Griffin said, "on the roof. That's where the four of them live. Rictus, Mar, Karna, and Jive? You know? I've met them all. But Karna." "Pray you never do," said Mrs. Griffin. "Now listen to me, Harvey. I've seen many children come and go through this house, some of them foolish, some of them selfish, some sweet, some brave. But you are one of the brightest souls I have ever set eyes on. I want you to take the joy you can from being here. Use the hours well, because there'll be fewer than you think." Harvey listened patiently to this. Then, when she'd finished, he said, "I still want to meet Mr. Hood." "Mr. Hood is dead," Mrs. Griffin said, exasperated by his persistence. "Dead? You swear?" "I swear," she replied. "On the grave of my poor Clue Cat, I swear. Mr. Hood is dead, so don't ask about him ever again." This was the first time Mrs. Griffin had ever come close to giving Harry an order, and though he wanted to press her further, he decided not to. Instead, he said he was sorry for bringing up the subject and wouldn't do it again. And then he left her to her secret sorrows. Okay, fifth graders, go enjoy your fantasy books. Don't forget to keep doing your the timeline of internal and external quests. Work on that maybe today, and off you go.